Hi, my name is Barb Nangle. I'm the founder of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting. I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery.
This is episode 13, Forgiveness. In 1994, I kicked my father out of my life. It wasn't one particular thing he did, though there was an event that caused me to say, that's it, I'm done. It was really just his lack of acceptance of me for who I am. And believe me, it was not lost on me that my issue with him was that I didn't feel accepted by him. And here I was not accepting him for who he was. He was just not the father I wanted. Ha! Irony. I pretty much got the message from him repeatedly. You are not the daughter I want. We ended up being estranged for 11 years at that point before reconnecting. During those 11 years, I did a ton of work to try to forgive him. I said a forgiveness prayer for years. I went to a 2-day workshop on forgiveness, and I read a ton of books, all of which told me why to forgive, which I kind of got by then, but not entirely. Not how to forgive. Nobody was telling me that. I was like, all right, people, I get it. I need to forgive. How the fuck do I do it? Eventually, I was able to forgive him, which I'll tell you about in a little while. But first, I'd like to go over some of the many reasons we need to forgive. I think it's really important to understand why before we actually do it. Actually, so we can really do it. So as frustrated as I was that I just couldn't find anyone to tell me how to do it at that time, I'm glad I read all the things about why, because I really, really got the importance of forgiveness by the time I figured out how to do it. And for addicts, forgiveness is extremely important. We simply cannot recover without it. Holding on to resentments is a surefire way to relapse again and again and again. Here are some of the things I've learned about forgiveness, some of which come in the form of quotes. The first is, lack of forgiveness is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. In other words, it's toxic for us, not for them. I know that for me, sometimes I held on to my resentment almost like it was a weapon against the other person, whether I'm talking about my dad or someone else, like it was somehow inflicting pain on them by me not forgiving them. And that's really just not true. It's really toxic to me. Forgiveness means giving up all hope of a better past. That is, we need to focus on the present if we want any kind of peace. Oh, and we need to forgive ourselves when we mess up and then move on. Think of it like this. If you were walking down a set of stairs and you slipped, you'd get up and continue down the stairs. You'd never give up and throw yourself down the rest of the stairs. So forgive yourself when you make a mistake. Remember, you are flawsome. That means you're awesome in your flawedness and you're flawed in your awesomeness. Being flawed does not take away from your awesomeness. We are all flawed as humans. Forgiveness does not mean that what the person did was okay. I think I somehow thought that was the case before I did all this reading that I was doing. It does not mean you have to forget what they did. I think I also believed that at one point. It simply means you are untethering from it. You are letting go and not carrying the incident, episode, pattern, or relationship with you. You have declared yourself done with it. That being said, my experience is that forgiveness is something that has to be done again and again. It gets easier over time, and the times in between needing to forgive become fewer and farther between. But my personal experience is that it's not one and done. I must forgive again and again until I no longer do, until I'm cleansed of it. Here's another quote. Forgiveness is unlocking the door to set someone free and realizing you were the prisoner. That was by Max Lucado. Here's another. We are very largely what we remember, says Bishop Desmond Tutu. Forgiveness is giving up the idea that the past could have been different. Remember from my second episode on acceptance that acceptance is the answer to my problem today. So as Bishop Tutu is saying, forgiveness is an acknowledgement that I accept that this is the past I had. There's no sense spending any time dwelling on that fact. It was that way. No sense dwelling on wishing it had been different. It wasn't different. It was the way it was. Forgiveness is acknowledging that. This is a bit longer quote by Larry James. Quote, forgiveness is an act of the imagination. It dares you to imagine a better future, one that is based on the blessed possibility that your hurt will not be the final word on the matter. It challenges you to give up your destructive thoughts about the situation and to believe in the possibility of a better future. It builds confidence that you can survive the pain and grow from it. That one in particular made me so hopeful when I read it. And this one is by Edwin Markham. He drew a circle to shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle to take him in. This tells me that when I forgive someone, I have the ability to bring them back into the circle of we, because it doesn't serve me to think of us and them with anybody. There's no them. There's only us. And this by Mark Twain. Forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that crushed it. So he's saying there's a sweetness to forgiveness. And this one by James Baldwin. I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hates so stubbornly is because they sense once the hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with the pain. And aren't all we addicts trying to avoid pain? Isn't that why we numbed in the first place? The thing is, all that work we've been doing to avoid pain actually creates more pain. Resistance creates more pain. And forgiveness is continuing to hurt yourself when they've stopped hurting you. So it doesn't mean that what happened was right, or that if you forgive a person, your relationship with them will improve. Here's another one. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each person's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. Longfellow. And another. Seeing the light in addition to the lampshade. Forgiveness helps us change our focus from everything is bad to the possibility of something good. After many years of reading all kinds of things and collecting these quotes and more, I finally came across a book that actually told me how to forgive. It was by the Dalai Lama and Victor Chan, and it's called The Wisdom of Forgiveness. He says it's all about compassion. I'm not exactly sure how he said it, but whatever he said, in 2005, I was able to look at my father as a person, as a man, not as just my father. It was the first time I'd ever done that. It never occurred to me to do that. And it caused me to really depersonalize things in a way I never had before. When I looked at him as a person, I realized he didn't get the wife he wanted. he didn't get the sons he wanted. He didn't get the daughter he wanted or the life he wanted. And that must have sucked. Objectively, that would suck for anyone. Now, had he been in recovery, he would have learned acceptance is the answer to my problem today. But he wasn't. Interestingly, I wrote a letter to my father in my journal after reading that book. And the letter I ended up mailing him was almost word for word what I'd written in my journal. There were only a couple of word changes in the letter I sent. It just came out of me, everything I wanted to say. So we rekindled our relationship, but it was still always strained though. I could never quite figure out how to relate to him. But I didn't continue to hold on to the resentment and the animosity and this really heavy, clinging, dominating my life way that I did before all that work. The situation did not get all tied up in a neat bow, though. He died last year, and we were estranged again, and had been for the last couple of years before he died. I simply could not tolerate his dysfunctional behavior, and I just sort of let him go. I have no qualms about having been estranged from him when he died. I wasn't sure if I'd ever speak to him again when I decided to stop contact, and I wasn't sure how I'd feel if he died while we were estranged. Honestly, I felt a sense of relief when he died, and I had the realization that I could love him now, that it was safe to love him now, to be vulnerable now that he's on the other side. All that was propelled along by my recovery and the forgiveness process, which I started long before recovery. And my recovery actually gave me way more compassion than I ever had before for him. Even having gone through this process of forgiveness, remember that the key ingredient to forgiveness is compassion. There is no one who is entirely evil. No one. As a result of my recovery, I came to understand that my father wasn't doing things to me. My father was just doing things. And the things he did to me were very likely done to him. How sad. When he screamed and yelled at me for getting hurt or having a car accident, it was probably because he didn't have the capacity to say, "It scared me that you got hurt," or "I was afraid you were going to die," or maybe even, "I'm sorry I didn't protect you and keep you safe." When I took a searching and fearless moral inventory of my life in step 4, I realized that if I really wanted to be forgiven for the things I've done, then I must forgive. Specifically, I must forgive him. For we committed the same transgressions. Even if you didn't commit the same transgressions as the person or people you feel you cannot forgive, know that this is how the universe works. If you want to be forgiven for anything, then you must forgive others. And you must forgive yourself. As the character of God in the movie Bruce Almighty says, no matter how dirty something gets, you can always clean it. You can always begin again in love. And often that starts with forgiveness. That's it for today. Namaste. Oh, and you are forgiven.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can get future episodes of my podcast.